desolate mountain kingdom visited by ancient priests from the east, known as the Magi. Southeastern Turkey. 7,000 feet high atop a barren mountain called Nemrut Dağ lie the ruins of the lost kingdom of Kamageni. Here, in 62 BC, a mysterious royal sanctuary was built by King Antiochus I. Colossal statues were created of lions and eagles, and Persian and Greek gods, as well as two massive sculptures of the king himself.
Now, what Antiochus was trying to do was to produce a synthesis, a new version of the old religions. And what he basically did was to take the Persian gods and put them into Greek dress. So you've got a synthesis happening of the Persian gods with their Greek equivalents.
The reason he built a colossal statue of himself among the gods was, I guess, a presumption on his part that he would indeed ascend to heaven and eventually be among them.
The conical peak was the highest point in the kingdom of King Antiochus. Measuring 150 feet high and 500 feet wide, it is man-made with countless small limestone rocks, and was said to be the location of the king's royal tomb. Researchers believe the memorial was originally built as two large plazas. The one on the east side was used to celebrate the birthday of King Antiochus. The one on the west side was used to commemorate the day in 62 BC when Antiochus became the leader of a secret society.
I think it's meant to symbolize Mount Olympus, the home of the gods. Because you've got the gods seated round it, and now you've got a peak above them. I think this is all very symbolic. It's a stage for carrying out certain rituals and performances.
And he also shows himself in the relief stele shaking hands to all the gods, as if the gods recognize him as one of their own and are welcoming him into heaven.
Mysteriously, both the site and the kingdom were abandoned in the 1st century AD. And so far, the king's legendary burial chamber has never been found. But another question still remains. Just why did King Antiochus build this mysterious and massive monumental sanctuary? According to researchers, evidence found at Nemrut Dağ suggests the king had a profound interest in and understanding of star sciences.
One example of the advanced knowledge of astronomy that they had is actually the lion horoscope, which gives us a very precise date. We know that the position of the stars in the lion's body fits with the positions of stars of Leo given in a book of Eratosthenes, who was a Greek astronomer from Alexandria who wrote a book about the stars.
The arrangement of stars on the lion horoscope represented the constellation of Leo as seen in the sky in July 62 BC, a configuration that wouldn't be visible again for 25,000 years. Further evidence of the exceptional knowledge of the stars was found in a nearby shaft that Antiochus built into the mountain.
the shaft runs into the mountainside there at an angle of 35 degrees to the horizontal, and it's about 150 meters long, and there's nothing at the bottom.
Computer analysis reveals that on 2 days of the year, the sun's rays would illuminate the bottom of the shaft. Once when in line with the constellation of Leo, and once when in line with Orion.
Now that is a very interesting point in the sky, because it's the pathway of the sun crosses over the Milky Way, our galaxy, and that to the ancient world was known as the Gate of Heaven. And there were two of these, one where they crossed in the north and the other where they crossed in the south. There were two gates to heaven. So we can understand that that gateway would be where the soul of the king is going back to heaven through Heaven's Gate.
Given the fact that neither Antiochus's tomb or remains have been found, is it possible that the king actually journeyed to the stars through a heavenly gate, as ancient astronaut theorists contend? During his life, researchers believe Antiochus studied with a priestly sect of Eastern astrologers called the Magi, who were thought to be able to predict and even manipulate events based on their knowledge of the stars.
The Magi were renowned priests from the far Near East who had advanced astronomical knowledge, and it's well known that most of the astronomers from the Near East, specifically ancient Iraq, Sumer, recorded series of events happening in the heavens over hundreds of thousands of years. This information was kept on stone tablets, held very sacredly, and only passed down to the high priests.
According to the Gospel of Matthew in the New Testament, it was 3 of these Magi who followed celestial signs and stars to the birthplace of Jesus in Bethlehem. A coincidence?
What's interesting about this story is that the Star of Bethlehem wasn't used as a navigation point. It is clearly stated as it guided the wise men to the place of Christ. A star cannot guide someone. It can only be used as a navigation point. So this brings up the idea that the star was possibly a UFO.
Today, we think that the Magi were magicians, and that is actually why we have the word magic today. But when I hear about magical powers, that raises a flag, because magic as such does not exist. So were these Magi, in fact, in possession of some type of an extraterrestrial technology? Because according to the ancient texts, it was the initiates of each culture who were in touch with extraterrestrials, and it was the initiates who later became priests or Magi.
Is it possible that Antiochus was, in fact, a Magi, one who learned celestial knowledge from extraterrestrial sources? If so, might the monumental sanctuary at Nemrut Dog have been built as a place to contact star travelers? The answer may have been found among the ruins of Nemrut Dog.
The head of Antiochus is placed on the statue which is appropriate for Mercury, and that's because Mercury is the planet of initiation for priests, and he's one himself, so he models it on himself. And people think this is him being boastful, sitting among the gods. It's not. It's actually a code to say that he's one of the priests.
Eventually annexed by the Romans in the 1st century AD, King Antiochus and his court became scattered throughout the region. Or were they? According to ancient astronaut theorists, they may have instead used a heavenly gate to depart through to a distant realm. An audacious idea? Perhaps. And there are those who believe further evidence can be found in one of the driest areas of the world, in South America. Peru, South America. 250 miles south of the capital of Lima lies one of the driest places on Earth. A wasteland that once was home to an ancient civilization called Nazca. Thriving between the 15th century BC and 500 AD, the Nazca were a deeply religious and spiritual people who built their ceremonial center in the temple city of Cahuachi.
Cahuachi es el centro ceremonial en adobe.
Cahuachi is the largest adobe ceremonial center in the world. Therefore, we find groups of temples and pyramids of immense size. Spirituality was the most important thing in Cahuachi. The people of Nazca used the sacred spaces to elevate themselves in order to communicate with the deities.
The Nazca predominantly were a farming people, so Cahuachi was built at the prime when they had all the food they needed and they had enough resources to be able to develop a highly evolved religious system.
But the Nazca people and their culture mysteriously vanished some 1,200 years ago, though not before etching a series of enormous geoglyphs, or ground drawings, into the nearby desert floor.
La línea de Nazca fueron un elemento importantísimo para sus manifestaciones.
The Nazca lines were an important element of their religious worship and their ceremonies. They would walk through these lines during their ceremonies, breaking ceramics and offering important elements to the deities from their own culture.
Elementos importantes de su propia cultura.
The great geoglyphs are composed of dozens of spirals, triangles, and trapezoids, as well as miles of zigzagging lines.
This whole flat area, which covers several square miles, is covered in stones made of iron oxide, either red or black, and that's what gives it the darkish brownish red appearance. But right underneath the surface is clay, which is white, and all I have to do